Hello everyone, in today's video we will show you how to build a robust structural mesh model. Modex 3D Studio provides function to create or edit surface mesh and solid mesh. You can click on Mesh tab and you can find Structure Mesh below, and then click into Structure Mesh. You can see the function is divided into 4 sections, including 2 surface mesh section, 1 solid mesh, and 1 checked section. Before started, to demonstrate how to build a structured mesh, here are the useful features for mesh creation. On the model tree, different icons indicate the current status and different type of the model, such as mesh, polysurface, or solid mesh. Display setting can help you modify the visibility of selected item. Snap option located on the bottom right of the studio, it helps locking the position that you would like to select. Also, for further display setting can be changed in the preference setting. The model we're gonna use today is a stat file including runner and part. So we will first divide the model into 4 sections. Here you can see that we use extract face to divide the model. And then we select the extra parts and hide it. The next thing, we're gonna draw some feature lines and dot to help divide the poly surface. Here you need to make sure that you are using the snap option at the bottom right. So we're dividing the circle into 8 sections to help us fully divide the part into 4 sections. After drawing all the lines we need, we're gonna divide the poly surface. So here we'll select divide poly surface and use the curve we draw, and then click yes. And you can see that there will be some extra feature lines. Next, we will be using extract faces to extract the face we would like to use. So you can see that this is only 1/4 of the whole model we have here. So first we will be building the structure mesh of the part. So we're gonna hide the runner first. And then for the part, we're gonna divide the part into 2, so we can just build half of the model. We're using the same step as previously. So here we're gonna project the top curve under the lower surface. Here we're making sure that the curve is perpendicular to the upper curve. So after everything is fine, we will divide the face using the curve we just project. And you can see that there's the extra feature lines. And then we extract the middle part and start with the middle part. So what we're gonna do here is we're going to the structure mesh and use the all grid face to create a face that is already divided into many sections. Here we're gonna use the project curve again to make sure that the curve is on the faces that we would like to divide it. So here you can see that there's curve on the faces, and then we will extract the edge curve first here because we're gonna use these curve later. Okay, so after we have the curve, we also need to divide the curve to make the future lines on the poly surface. So here we can hide the curve and then check if everything is fine. you can see that there is a blue line. Blue line is the feature lines. So here we select select the poly surface and start seeding. The next thing we will use create surface mesh and only create half of the mesh. So you can see that the faces is divided into 3 mesh, so we will use combine mesh first to combine the mesh together. So the next step is gonna to build a solid mesh in between. You need to select 3 reference point for this mesh creation. So here I'm drawing a middle line. That would help us later. And also the point right here also help us to build the solid mesh later. Okay, so the next thing is we're gonna build the outer solid mesh for the part. So here we will enable the poly surface of outer, and then we will draw some points and lines that could help us create the faces. Here we will use the planar surface to create the plane. Okay. So the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna draw some feature lines on this plane to help us create a better surface mesh because the geometry of this surface is hard to generate a quad mesh. Here we're gonna split the lines into 2 sections because we're gonna use the middle point. Make sure that you enable the snap option of middle point to select the middle point. So for the corner area, we're gonna use a rectangle to create. So in this way, you can create a full surface mesh with all quadro. So using the same process, dividing the face, creating the feature lines. And then the next step, we will be going to seeding and create the face mesh again. So the faces is consists of many different faces, so we will use the combined two to make sure that's only one face, and it will help us to move on. So next we will be using 3D locations, using this function to copy the faces to the point we put it as the reference. So next step, we need to make sure that the faces is same as the geometry because this section is where the co-runner is connected. So we need to slightly rotate the surface mesh we just copy here to make sure that we can fully attach to the code runner. Okay, after rotating and adjusting the face, we will be creating the solid mesh using these faces and the line we just draw. So here we will be using the Revolve function and select a face and also the rotate line and directly create a solid mesh using the angle function. As you can see, 45 degrees and the mesh is created. The next step is using tube face to create the solid mesh like previous we do. We also need to select 3 reference points. Here we are using a guide curve and then input the layer accordingly. So we finished creating 3 solid mesh, but we need to check the contact boundary. You can see there's blue and gray here. Blue indicates that the contact boundary is fully matched. So you can see it's all blue. So we will be clicking join mesh to join all the solid mesh together. And then we will check the inner and outer solid mesh. But before that, we will using the align nodes first and then check. And you can see that it's all blue. And we'll be using join mesh to join all things together. And then the next thing is we can use the mirror function to generate rest of the part. You can fully contact. And then check again. So there's not fully contact, so we will be using the align nodes function again to make sure that it's all matched. Okay, so make sure everything is matched and then click join mesh. And then we finish the part solid mesh. Okay, so next we're gonna start build the solid mesh of the co-runner. So first we're gonna divide the co-runner again. Okay, for the smallest section, we're gonna use the surface mesh of the part to create. So we're gonna extract the mesh first and then extract the element that is connected to the co-runner. So here you need to make sure that you're selecting all the elements that is needed. The spray selection function will be easier when you wanted to select the whole face. But here, since we are only selecting the one we want, so we are not enabling this option. So after selecting all, you can see that the extract elements perfect match the poly surface of the runner. So we will be drawing a line here. And then we will create the solid mesh by sweep. So sweep function, you only need to select one solid mesh and then you select the guide curve. Here we enter 4 layers and it will directly create the solid mesh for you. So after the first section of the co-runner, we're going to move on to the second section. And same, we are going to use the surface mesh of the previous solid mesh. So here we extract the mesh and then we hide it. We only show the one we wanted to use so we will not get confused. So next step, we're gonna extract the curve on the other side, and then we can create a face. So using the planar surface, and then select all this curve we just extract and then create. Okay, so the next thing is we're gonna divide the curve into multiple sections. So we can draw the lines accordingly to help us divide the surface mesh. So same, we're creating a feature lines on the poly surface. The next thing is we need to make sure that we're also creating a feature lines at the bottom face of this geometry. So you can use tab function to lock in the direction. So here we will use project curve to project the curve we just drew, and then divide the face again. Okay, so after we create the feature lines we need, we can extract the face. What we're doing here is just separating the face so we can create the solid mesh later. So we are starting to seeding. So here you need to make sure that the seeding here can also attach to the surface mesh you just created from the previous runner. So here we're setting 11 layers because the surface mesh is 11 layer when we extract it from the part surface mesh. So after everything is correct, you can just click check, and then we're gonna start seeding for the poly surface we just create. So make sure that you're seeding all the same so it can perfectly connect to the one you just did. After everything is fine, we will directly create the face mesh by selecting all the face you wanted to do, and then click OK. You can see that the mesh is created, and also the mesh for the plane. So here we need to combine the mesh so we can do the solid mesh later. After combining all the mesh, we will use the lofting function. So lofting function, you need to select the top mesh and the bottom mesh and the side mesh. After everything is selected, you can check the color and then click OK. The solid mesh is directly correct. So after everything is created, you can check the contact boundary. If it's all blue means there's no problem. Moving on to the next section, we will be hiding the solid mesh from previous, and then extract the mesh and the elements we need like before. So next we will be creating the face for this part. But so first thing we want to do is to extract the edge curve. And then we're gonna divide this curve into 10 sections total. And then we will draw some lines to help us create the plane. For more complicated faces, we wanted to use create surface from for curve. So after successfully create the curve, we will directly go into seeding. And make sure the seeding is exactly the same like the one we just created. So then we would create the mesh. After creating the mesh, we will be combining the mesh together. So next we will be creating the mesh by two face. So also the same, select the start and the end and also the 3 reference points. But here we're gonna create it by mesh size. So the mesh is create, and then we're gonna check if it's fully contact with the previous one. So after everything is checked, we're gonna directly extract the mesh. For the selection angle, we're gonna increase to 10 degrees because this face is more complicated. Okay, so next step, we're gonna draw some lines to help with creating the plane. So here we will be drawing a dot. Make sure you enable the snap option to lock in the center point. And below, we also wanted to draw a dot because we wanted to create a plane here. So our next thing is to draw a circle. The direction of the circle will be affected by the perspective. So if the direction of the circle is wrong, you just need to change your perspective and it will be okay. So next we will create the plane for the circle. And then we will move the plane to below. Here we'll use the tab to lock in the direction and then select the point. We're gonna scale the plane to make sure that it's intersect with the runner. And then we wanna put the points here. Make sure you enable the intersect at the snap option so you can lock in the point. So the next step is we're gonna draw a circle again here and then create the face for 2 circles, and then we wanted to divide the runner using these polysurface. So you can see there's the feature lines created, and then we're going to hide the circle and create an all-grid face using this function. Here we're going to extract the face first because we only created 1/4 of the runner. And also for the faces of the runner, we also need to extract only the 2 parts. And also the mesh, we're hiding the other part, only leaving the mesh and the 2 poly surface we just cut. Here we're going to draw some line to help us create the surface mesh because the mesh is complicated. Since the poly surface is a curve, so we need to use project curve to make sure that the curve is on the poly surface. So after we have all the curve, we can divide the face to create the feature line. With the feature lines, we can directly go into seeding. And then you need to make sure that the seeding of the middle part is exactly the same as the surface mesh. Okay, so next step we're moving on to create the mesh. After everything is created, we need to combine the mesh first. So here we use the check function. You can see the red line indicates that it's free edge or not match. So we're using the stitch function to make sure that the mesh is matched. And then with no red lines, we can combine the mesh together. So the next step is we're moving on to the inner part of the runner. For runner, we normally just do 7 layers. We're only creating the most inner part. So here we're using created by 2 faces. And the mesh layer here, we need to match the surface mesh at the outers. So it's total 13 layers. So we're creating a 13 layer solid mesh and then extract the mesh. So we're extracting the 2 face of the inner part that is closest to the outer part. So we can create the solid mesh using the faces. So here we will create by 2 face and then select the part we just extract and also the outside, the reference point. And we are creating a 7 layers solid mesh. So after the mesh is created, we need to check the mesh together in case we move it. After we join all the mesh, we can check again with the previous solid mesh we just created. So next we will be creating rest of the runner. So starting with drawing the face for the top. Here we're gonna directly create the surface mesh using the all grid face function, customized into 7 layers. And combine the layers we would like to use. And also creating the same thing for the bottom. And also combine the mesh. So we're gonna extract the mesh from here and then extract top layer. And also the bottom. So once we have the surface mesh here, we can directly create the face using 2 faces. Unlike previous runner, we will be using the mesh size to create. Same thing applies to the upper part. So after everything is created, we will show the solid mesh to check if fully contact, and then join the mesh again. So here we can finish all the solid mesh, and every position is fully contact. So last, we finish 1/4 of the model. We are doing mirror to copy the model and make sure. So every copy you need to make sure that it's fully contact. There's pink, so we need to use a line note to make sure that it's fully contact. And then check again. After it is fine, we will continue to do a mirror. And then again, we need to check if the contact boundary. So once everything is contact, the structure mesh is finished. We can connect all the runner mesh together. So after attributes the runner and the part, this will be the final models that you have. So hope this demonstration can help you with your model and help you building a structure mesh by yourself. Thank you for your listening.